So hello, it's been a long time. Uh, let's take it. How do you call this? Ambiguous yet interesting at the same time. So what I'll be discussing about is my blog. Syempre, I started this blog as a requirement for my English 1 class under uh, Professor Francis Kina. So that was around actually 2011. Started this blog at as part of submitting my requirements to my professor. Well, while at the same time as that time unravels, revealing, not actually revealing, uh, coinciding with the bitter end that I experienced with my love interest that time. So I used this blog as an outlet. Those posts were no longer existent. However, I found my passion in writing, so I write and write and write and write. Mm, some people say that my writing has developed over the years. I managed to write lengthy pieces, so now the blog is, I don't know. I've been posting various stuff ever since. So, ayan. That's my picture when I was in Hong Kong presenting my thesis. So before mentioning the rest of the post, giving quick insights about what I post here, let's look at the header. So zooming in, so it was a collage of seven photos. Yes, 7 photos. Actually, it's just six since the sixth one is just a drawing. I'll be discussing that later. So the first one, first on the left, is the photo that I took when I was trekking on the mountains of Tacloban. This was the I think the most farthermost and remote barangay in Tacloban City. It's situated beyond the mountains overlooking Tacloban Bay, San Jose Bay. So that's I picture. That's me posing for a photo. Uh, Somehow a memento if in case I get lost, since I was hiking alone on those mountains. So second one is with Lucila Badjola, so Dada. When our group was having we're hanging out on Fort Santiago. This was the Rizal Museum there. So the overcoat, the hats, and the scarves were available that time. So we had the luxury to pose for a photo. So the ones willing was only me and Dada. So only us two pose for a photo. That's it. For the third one, this was in Star Billiards. The first time that I got here, December 2014. So I was posing on with the affordable cue sticks that they were selling there. The fourth one was taken in Giwan, Giwan Station of Pag-asa. So Giwan is in Eastern Samar, the easternmost municipality in the Visayan region. This was taken February 2015 as I do my research, my undergraduate research. Eventually, that research is the one that I was presenting here. So that's it. Fourth one was uh, with a fellow, what do you call this? A fellow hiking partner. So not actually, we were in pairs that time. So she was my pair that time. This was the first time that I officially hike a mountain. So with guides and everything, with ropes. So this was in Pico de Oro in Cavite. The sixth one was the doodle that Coco Neri drew of me 2014. Oh yes, 2014. So that was her impression of me. So wearing my uh, PE uniform, also wearing slacks that are uh, not that entirely long to the point that my socks are revealing. So just like Michael Jackson, so she portrayed me like Michael Jackson, yeah, doing moonwalks. The last photo was me and another close friend of mine, Carla Coderes, back in 2015. Yes, I became classmates with her during the mid-year term. We were taking Phil 40 that time, so I had a great time in that class. So the pinned post that I had in this page is the site map. Actually, I just put it here so that the the would-be readers, would not be having a hard time reading or browsing through. So I put my social media here. This is the link to my Facebook account. That's it. Yes. This is for my Twitter, Ask.fm, Tumblr, Instagram, YouTube, email, and Patreon. Sorry for the miss. So the next post is, I think, the abstract and the acknowledgements that I wrote in my undergraduate thesis. This is the undergraduate thesis that I was talking about. So here it is. So acknowledgements, of course. As I said, there's nothing to be thankful that this topic ever come into place, because Typhoon Haiyan came at the expense of 6,300 fellow Filipinos who died during its onset. Even so, what happened, there's nothing that I can do to change what happened there. So to the very least, I sought to know how strong Typhoon Haiyan was in order for Filipinos to get ready in case another storm with a similar intensity like Typhoon Haiyan came. So the first question in mind is, how strong is Typhoon Haiyan? So in this thesis I did that. So the acknowledgements are there, quite a lengthy piece, and this girl, so I won't be mentioning her name, but I'll be just highlighting that's the love interest that I was talking about. Was already 10 years ago, so time flies, really time flies. So I wrote this on the day of my birthday in 2015. So this is the abstract of my thesis and the summary of my thesis. So that is what the post is all about. So the next highlighted post here is my write-up after I won the best. My write-up after I graduated in 2015. So this is my grad photo, and this is my acknowledgements and write-up. So next in line was an ongoing series. I already wrote chapter 4, but I am having a hard time organizing the rest of the chapter. So maybe my goal is to publish it before the year ends, and I've been saying that since 2016, because the write-up that I did for chapter 4 was already written in 2016, by the time that Dwight was born into presidency. However, I was finding it hard to organize because it's about how laws came into place, what are the factors that leading into what's happening right now, how the law is interpreted, how the Filipinos became indolent about it, etc. So the next the next series in line, actually I discontinued the series named Travelogue. So this was about my first girlfriend last year. So she suddenly ghosted me. So in this series of posts I wrote the feelings that have been brewing inside me that time. So it's quite spontaneous. However, uh, I decided that what's the use of posting this, so I discontinued the series. However, of course, I won't be revising any of these. It is just what it is. So it's just there for people to see. Even though I already move on from this chapter of my life. So that's me when I was riding my bike across Central Luzon. That in the background was the view of the Caipian Road of San Jose del Monte from Caipian Road. It was a high point. It's overlooking the valley below, and that layer over there was a picture of that girlfriend of mine who ghosted me. So I won't be mentioning her name here, but of course you'll get the clues into knowing who that girl was. Yeah. So that's basically it. So chapter 2 was about start of my journey, about tires, and that's the bike I used to travel across Central Luzon. I recently lost this bike last August 2020, this year, only this year. After I got here in UP. So I'm just waiting for my payroll, my salary in order to buy a new one. So that's it. Next is the remotely stranded series. I hope that I can finish this by the end of the year. This is my recollection, account of what happened when I was stranded in the remote barangay of Pintong Bukawi in San Mateo, Rizal. So I became stranded there March 17th. By the time I was planning to travel across Central Luzon again on board my Japanese bicycle when midway in the journey Duterte proclaimed or imposed enhanced community quarantine, a stricter lockdown across the island of Luzon. So also finding I find that the route that I traversed to be very difficult. Actually, this was one of the most difficult journeys that I took. However, it was also one. No, actually, I was to the point. I was already exhausted to the point of near death. I was already begging for the police mobile to carry me when they passed through the wilderness that times. However, they just continued on, much to my horror. Those things, I recounted it here. Probably the 10th chapter is what I find to be the toughest, yet the most, what do you call this? Metaphor heavy write-up that I have ever written. So it was one of the lengthiest write-up actually. My lengthiest being my essay about the batch valedictorian. Later I will discuss that. So it's all about my account of what happened during my time in Pintong Bukawi. Next is the Filipino translation of Impresiones by Antonio Luna in 1893. Actually, this was written in 2016. Cristel and I were collaborating with Professor Florentino Niegos, my advisor, in translating Antonio Luna's Impresiones as part of the competition held by Commission ng Wikang Filipino. So whoever wrote the best translation wins 100,000 pesos. However, maybe around April 2016, the faculty center was burned to the ground by accident, putting the rest of my write-ups, that the drafts that I wrote about the succeeding chapters, to ashes. So I only managed to post the three digital copies, so the three drops. Forgive me for my rugged Filipino writing there. I plan also to finish this ever with the current academic load at hand. Maybe will be next year when I have a when I manage to have my free time. Next is about nationalism. I was actually spurred into writing this after watching General Luna. So in this piece I attempt to define what nationalism is, how to exude that nationalism. Of course, that such thing is quite an ambiguous thing to describe. So there are many interpretations, I cannot assert that mine is the most correct one. However, I try to reconcile many of the conflicting interpretations about nationalism, because if it's too much, it becomes jingoism, and to the point that it might be similar to what Nazism is in 1930s Germany in the 1930s. So I try to draw a distinction. Next is actually this is supplementary series for the indolence of the Filipinos, the fault in our study. I attempt to look into the errors, actually my perceived errors on this current school curriculum for the elementary and the high school students imposed by DepEd. I was inspired to write this when the principal of my alma mater was, was ranting to me, was saying her say about how DepEd makes students complacent and not actually it inhibits the students non-committants to their studies. So I tried to look into the possible faults. So the first fault that I saw was about the Filipinos' perception of values. So about their values and education. So about good manners and right conduct. So maybe I'll try to organize on how to write the rest of the series, because I just wrote this in the spur of the moment and I thought, oh, it's a good series. So I planned 10 chapters with no topic in mind yet. I'll try organizing this at a later time. So memorandums, actually I wrote 1 to 3. However, I find it awkward into posting those two. The memorandum number 1 was more about my first love in high school. So this was about her, in her perspective, I guess. I try to make a supposition on what she was thinking at the time. So it's quite cringy in recollecting that I wrote this kind of write-ups. However, I just put it there just in case. Just in case. So, if you can read Japanese, you will know who that girl, the first girlfriend, my first girlfriend in 2019 was. The subject of the travelogue series, that girl who ghosted me. So these were the write-ups that I dedicated to her. So to the her departure led me into filing a sabbatical for about a week from work. So to wail out those negative emotions, to let out, to cry, to reflect everything. So in the recent years, my write-ups were mostly about anime. So to be honest, Cristel encouraged indirectly encouraged me into writing these write-ups, into being more vocal about my passion in anime. So in that passion, I wrote these following movie reviews and some of the uh, how do you call this, lyrics for some of the songs that doesn't have translations yet. So I tried my best with the meager Japanese proficiency that I had to translate, to listen to those songs and to make English translations, and also their romaji, so that many people can so that people can sing along with the song. So of course, it's no wonder who was the best girl, my anime best girl, who is, so it's Kato Megumi. It is from Saikano, Saina Heroine, How to Raise a Boring Girlfriend. So that's the series that she was in, and I okay. So it started with writing this lengthy write-up about Kimi no Nawa. So I wrote this around October. Of course, it was upon the recommendation of Christelle that I watched this movie, and I was blown away. So uh, out, out of, how do you call this? In defense to those who are saying that this movie had many plot holes, I tried to write a continuous narration of what happened in the movie to make my case. So in the end, I ended up writing almost 8,000 word an 8,000 word write up about it. However, it was my most viewed post so far. Yes, of course. So I also watched and wrote about Kuzuno Honkai Scam's Wish. So two write-ups about the story itself and its main antagonist, Minagawa Kane. I also wrote. I just put there. I just this was in the series titled "The World God Only Knows." This was the song that Chihiro was singing at the end of season 3. This was a song at no, I forgot the name of that rhythm game. So actually, this was so past tense. Christelle's favorite song that time when she was playing. It's similar to Auto Jam, however, it's not limited to the keyboard. But, I'll remember it at a later. So I watched Koi no Katachi. So I was supposed to watch this movie with her. Koi to Uso. This is the first. How do you call this? The series that I watch. I read the manga before watching it out first hand. So next is Uchiage Hanabi. So this was its English title is Fireworks. So this is the first anime movie that I watched in the cinemas. I was alone, of course, alone on my own. I watched this December 2017, yes. And I tried to recollect much of the movie before. So I wrote this a day after I watched it. I know that if I delay writing if I delay writing it more, maybe I'll forget what I recounted about the movie. So I wrote it as early as possible. So school days, much to my shock, I watched this series. Much to my horror, especially at the ending, especially at the visual novel. Yes, I played that. Don't judge me. So one of my favorite write-ups, anime write-ups, was about Your Lie in April. Admittedly, I cried a lot watching this movie, watching this series, actually. So, just a reorganization of what has transpired, the wordings from both the anime and uh, the manga. How can I forget the manga? So I just reorganized it to the point that I somehow feel a symphony of emotions swelling inside of me. So I just organized the thoughts that I had from them, while also reflecting some of the statements made during in the series. Uh, this one, I think this was the ending song of Assassination Classroom. I looked it up in the internet and I still haven't found the lyrics, translated lyrics, so I ventured into providing the lyrics itself. So that's it. It's basically the story behind this. So Himitsu was also one of a it is a a similar project as such with graduation certificate. As I watch I Want to Eat Your Pancreas, which I wrote a reaction post about. So next was Ten Kinoko. So Weathering with You. This was the movie that I watched with my with that girl, that first girlfriend that I had last 2019, last year. Uh, Yoju Senki. I actually started writing this about a year ago, around May. However, I just finished that last April, so it took me almost a year to finish this write-up. Rascal Does Not Dream of a Dreaming Girl. I watched this movie around January, and then I managed to compile a reaction post about it around April or March. Actually, it's March. And I'm actually planning to watch her. I already watched, of course. I plan to write a review about Her Blue Sky. This was premiered last Valentine's Day this year. For the cinemas were locked down, so that was the last movie that I watched in the theaters. And hopefully in the next anime movie, I don't know. The times are still uncertain. I still don't know if I get to have a chance to watch cinema in the cinemas this year. Missing You series, and this was one of the series of write-ups that I actually put my heart into. Uh, I wrote it in glee, of course, recounting those events, how those events became so coincidental and so poetic. In my perspective, I actually wrote what I just saw in this story. Tried to recount that day over and over and over. Or for the first issue, that was for days over and over on how I was in glee, recounting those events with that girl. So that girl, Tel-chan, was actually Christelle. So it was heads over heels for her for almost 3 years. Nowadays we are just friends. Of course, we had our respective love lives. So the first issue span around October, for the month of October. Second issue was that day, October 20th. 25th? It fits in the 25th. That's very coincidental. Oh, it's in the 25th. So these events will be about well, we're already 4 years ago. So this is Missing You too. Missing You. Yes, these were real. Those events were real. I already put the name of that girl. This was Tel-chan posing before the Spolarium. So Style Chan posing before Fort Santiago. So cringe looking back to these times. So the following posts were just my lamentations about what happened, on how I was confused that time. So next one was my recount when I was UP Pulcro president. So I am having speech issues right now because of my perhaps it's because of my braces, and I'm getting a little sleepy right now. So I'm trying to narrate myself to sleep. Am I recording this? Of course, yes. So this was my recollection during my tenure as the president of UP People Club. So this was from 2012 to 2015. So I decided not to publish the third part because it contains controversial parts, and I might get sued for libel in posting this part because it was an exposition of some of the things that I did that was not right within the UP administration at the time. So it is what I also wrote at that unpublished part on why I decided to shy away from involving myself into politics, into focusing more for my thesis, which decision which I did not regret. So next in line were the poems. So cringe. So I wrote this back in 2015 and engraved this on the back of a sketch that I made, a sketch of crystal that I made. So this was quite a formal poem, if I were to give my opinion. So each line has 10 syllables in it. Guess I structured it in such way. Of course, there has to be rhyme. Of course, the ending syllable has to be the same. Of course, I did that. But to put the icing on the top of the cake, if you look at the first letters of each of these lines, so M-A-R-I-E, so Marie, C-H-R-I-S, T-E-L-L-E, so that's Christelle. So that's her third name, Joyce, then her surname, Lama. So all of the first letters of each line represents her name. You compile it as a whole. So that was how heads over heels I was over her that time. Of course, times have changed. So Christmas poem, if I into this, so this was about Choco. Poem number 2 is about Chi, so Clarissa Maligpon. Poem number 3 was about this was about Carl. Poem number 4, this was about Mega. I'm having cringe just looking at this. Spare me from this. So, from another classmate of mine. Number 6 was about Jessel, everybody's friend in IC. Poem number 7 was supposed to be about Faye, childhood friend of mine. Christmas poem number 8 was supposed to be about Miss Ariola. So, these were the poems that I wrote almost 10 years ago. I just posted it here in the blog.
Special mentions were Midnight Walking and 1430. So, on this poem, I tried to limit myself into having 1,410 syllables. So 143 times 10. So I love you 10 times. That's basically what's the subliminal message of this poem. So this is my recount of what's happening that time, my confusion, my feelings, everything. Midnight Walking was about my night stroll around UP. So I this period, this time, or in this instance, I was recalling about the events back in 2010 and 2011. So this was about Myrtle Tagulto. So I finally mentioned her name. So I broke my I broke my uh, imposition that I should not be mentioning her anymore. So Dear Tell, so of course, I already said her name here, so that's basically it. Compilation of my write-ups, and I think this was my Facebook post, recounting everything, spanning from 2010 to 2011. This was in Filipino language, Filipino and English language. This was the room where I fell, or this was the hallway where our hands touch each other, look into each other's eyes, and there I fell in love. It was the time. Good times, yet of course those were bygone years. Essays, I also write political essays. Eventually, eventually. So this was my latest post about discipline. Currently, I am planning to publish a historical essay about Marcos and his atrocities, his falsehoods that were being peddled nowadays with the revisionist propaganda that is being done by the Marcos family and their cohorts, their clients, their patrons, their fanatics. Special mentions goes to some of the movie reviews that I wrote about Goyong, Batang about General Luna, about Philippines having another Rizal. So the batch valedictorian's girlfriend is the lengthiest write up that I wrote so far. So this was the five of us posing during our graduation ceremony. This is my best friend Eric. Three of us, Eman Lejano posing for a photo, then me taking my vacation after graduation. There I recounted what happened in 2016 generally, apart from those loud-ish we tell that time. So this was about my PI 100 class, which I really enjoyed. It's one of the best class that I took in UP. So this was our excursion in Dolores, Quezon, with our encounter with the religious sects. When clustered together are being called Rizalistas. So this was the Husgado Cave. The photos, of course, not mine because I don't carry my phone when I trek. Because how they call this? I'm having anxiety in leaving my belongings behind, so I try as much as I can carry less possessions when I travel, especially when hiking. So quite a lengthy write-up, but I had my fun writing this because I recall how here I was also here I was recalling my encounters with my crush that time because I'm into Chinita, so that Chinita girl became group mates with her. So some of the childish crush moments, I recounted it here. I recounted those here. So cringe yet so interesting for still for me since it's still interesting. So another special mention was views on dating. Uh, Actually, in describing how I write, uh, there are two distinct writing styles that I employ. It it differs much when I try to narrate, and also it differs much when I try to express. So if I try to express myself, I tend to go around in circles, just like in this piece. If I try to narrate, what fuels me to write my narration was the metaphors and also how I string those events into a singular narrative. Of course, it's quite fallacious if I were to employ that in doing my historical text. However, of course, this especially in remotely stranded, it is just my perspective, so it's quite easier to write those chapters. So here in this on dating, this was written in 2019, so before meeting that first girlfriend of mine. Of course, we were already talking over the internet this time. We met up June 2019, so this was 2 months before, 2 months prior. This was my at that time views about dating in general. I recounted 7 romantic ventures on which I reflected mostly about. So those 7, of course, I will be name dropping those people. So those 7, the first one was my first love in high school, so Leia Julian. Second one was my crush when I transferred back to private school, and that's Mikey Dalumpines. You won't be finding her on Facebook anymore because she was already married and already had children. Third one was of course Martela Gulto. Fourth one, let me recall, of Choco. The fifth one, I'm still cursing that girl until up till this day. So that girl was Sheila Sarmiento. Sixth one was of course Cristela Laba. Seventh one was Carissa Maligon. So those seven. So I also post some of the compositions or the lyrics that I wrote, adaptations that I wrote, and some of the songs that I grown to love. So for example, maybe I won't be, just look it up later. So this was one of the projects that I did back in 2015. I compiled it on a blue book, on a 500-page blue book, which up till this day is still lost within my parents' house. Still haven't done an extensive search yet. So these were the parts of the musical that I managed to publish so far. So many ways to go for me. And some of the historical excerpts that I found in the library, yet I find it, on which I find would be substantial and beneficial if I were to publish it or write it, post it over the internet for people to refer about, especially on Jose Alejandrino's Price of Freedom. So I, of course, if you read Ampito Campos Rizal without the overcoat. He often quotes Alejandrino's anecdotes about Rizal. So this was the primary source of it. So I remember writing this at the engineering library. I typed this for about 4 hours. So what a me what a way to waste my time instead of reviewing for my subjects that time. Of course, my study habits were much different that time rather than what what my study habits are now. So back then I used to I don't know. I just used to listen to my professors, the lectures of my professors. Then when the exam is looming, I just try as much as I can to recall what professor was saying that time. I didn't bother to review my notes. I don't generally take notes unless it's really needed, or it's a very lengthy equation which I have a tendency to forget. So basically that kind of study habit was what led me into doing these ventures. Of course, uh, I'm proud that I managed to type this over the keyboard, and I reflected tons about it. So I remember word by word, but of course I don't memorize, but I I generally recall what this is all about. So uh, it's about Rizal, Alejandrino reflecting upon his encounter with Rizal, the anecdotes about Rizal, and eventually on how can you define what is to be a Filipino through Rizal. So as the first paragraph has said, Rizal is always an example whom we should have before us and whose teachings we should practice if we want to be useful to our country. So Rizal oversaw the atrocities committed by the Spanish government that was imposed there, the colonial government, and he didn't hold back in expressing his disapproval towards the government, and of course he tries much, as much as he can. He tried all the avenues that he had in hand to assert uh, what is to be a Filipino. Of course, that brought him to the firing grounds in Bagong Bayan. However, of course, that in turn led him to his transition before death. And up to this day, Filipinos venerate Rizal. And I hope that Filipinos can look into Rizal example, especially in this situation. That's basically it. So what a way to waste an hour. So the last three, Cuentos de la Muerte. If I recall, this was the series of write-ups that that I was inspired to do when I was having my nightmares of death. I often had nightmares of dying, so sensation of dying and sketch within my mind how it feels to die. So I try to compile those dreams of mine into write-ups. However, of course, how do they call this? Indolence got into me, so lack of effort. Eventually, lost my will, lost my drive into publishing those. I don't know where those write-ups currently are. So, such an incomplete blog. However, this is what it is. So, basically, this is what my blog's all about.